Destiny never fails. The unexpected reunion of two soulmates. They say destiny writes our lives with divine precision, and some stories prove that it never fails. Two young hearts, bound by a love so pure and intense, were torn apart by circumstances beyond their control. Time passed, and their lives took completely different paths, leaving behind only memories and forgotten promises. But destiny, patient and relentless, decides it's time to intervene. Decades later, in an unexpected twist, they meet again. The scars of the past and the choices they've made have shaped them into different people. But can the love between soulmates truly transcend time, pain, and adversity? Or does destiny have even greater plans for them? This is another heartwarming story from Living Narratives, where you feel the true emotion of stories that touch the soul and make us reflect on life. And you, where are you watching this video from? Share with us in the comments. The golden rays of the late afternoon sun filtered through the dense canopy of trees, casting a warm, dappled light over the quiet park. In a small, picturesque town where time seemed to move a little slower, Amelia sat beneath the largest oak tree in the park, her sketchbook balanced delicately on her knees. Her pencil danced across the page, capturing the fleeting beauty of the world around her. She loved this spot, where the rustling leaves whispered secrets of the past, and the air carried the faintest scent of blooming flowers. It was her haven, a place where her thoughts could wander freely. Across the park, Lucas stood at the edge of the small pond, skipping stones across the shimmering water. His laughter echoed as he managed 3 perfect skips, the ripples spreading out like tiny celebrations of his success. He was carefree, his world uncomplicated, and his heart full of dreams. Lucas often came to the park to clear his mind, to imagine a future far beyond the quiet boundaries of the town. Yet today, something felt different, as if the air carried a sense of anticipation. Amelia's gaze drifted from her sketchbook to the boy by the pond. She had seen him before, always with a bright energy that seemed to light up the spaces he occupied. There was something about him that intrigued her, though she couldn't quite place what it was. Without realizing it, her pencil began to sketch his outline, capturing the way he leaned slightly forward as he selected another stone. Lucas, feeling eyes on him, glanced up and caught her gaze. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The world around them, the rustling trees, the chirping birds, the gentle hum of life, faded into a distant background. Amelia's heart quickened as she quickly looked down at her sketchbook, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. But Lucas, never one to shy away, picked up the stone in his hand and began walking toward her. "Hi," he said, his voice as light and carefree as the breeze that ruffled his hair. "Are you drawing me?" Amelia's head shot up, her eyes wide with surprise. "What? No! I mean, maybe—" She closed her sketchbook hurriedly, as if to hide her work. Lucas laughed, not at her, but with a genuine warmth that put her at ease. "Don't worry," he said, sitting down on the grass beside her. "I'm sure it's better than I actually look." Amelia smiled despite herself, her initial nervousness melting away. "I'm Amelia," she said softly, meeting his gaze. "Lucas," he replied, offering a hand that she hesitated only a moment before shaking. "So, do you come here to draw often?" She nodded. "It's my favorite place. There's something peaceful about it. And you? Do you always skip stones like a professional?" He grinned. "I've had years of practice. I think I've perfected the art of doing nothing." They both laughed, the sound filling the quiet park like a melody. For the next hour, they talked about everything and nothing. Lucas told her about his dreams of traveling the world, of writing stories that would one day inspire others. Amelia shared her love for art and how she saw beauty in the simplest of things. It was as if they had known each other forever, their connection immediate and undeniable. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the park, Lucas stood and extended a hand to Amelia. "Come on," he said. "There's something I want to show you." Curious, she took his hand and followed him to the tallest oak tree in the park, its branches sprawling wide and its roots anchoring it firmly to the earth. "This is my favorite tree," Lucas said, looking up at it with a mix of admiration and reverence. "It's strong, unshakable. No matter how many storms come through, it's always standing." Amelia looked up at the tree, her heart swelling with a sense of wonder. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Lucas turned to her, his expression serious for the first time. "Let's make a promise," he said. "No matter what happens, no matter where life takes us, let's promise that our souls will always find their way back to each other." Amelia felt a lump rise in her throat at the sincerity in his voice. Without hesitation, she nodded. "I promise," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas smiled, a smile that seemed to hold the weight of the world and the lightness of hope all at once. "Then it's settled," he said, "no matter what." They carved their initials into the tree, a small but meaningful mark of a promise. As they stood there, the sun set behind them, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Neither of them knew what the future held, but in that moment, under the shelter of the oak tree, they believed in the strength of their bond and the certainty of their promise. The summer passed too quickly, as summers often do. For Amelia and Lucas, it was a season filled with stolen moments, shared dreams, and the kind of laughter that lingers long after it fades. The oak tree became their haven, a place where promises were whispered and futures imagined. But like all things, their idyllic days were not immune to the weight of reality. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Amelia's world was turned upside down. She found her mother sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale and strained. A single letter lay in front of her, its edges worn from being held too tightly. "Amelia," her mother said softly, her voice trembling, "we have to leave. Your uncle, he needs us. After your father." Her voice cracked, and she couldn't finish the sentence. The loss of Amelia's father earlier that year had left a void in their lives, and now the family was being uprooted again. Amelia's heart sank. "Leave? Where?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Her uncle lived across the ocean, in a country that felt more like a distant dream than a place she could call home. Her mother nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "We have no choice. It's what's best for us." Amelia's mind raced. She thought of the town she had always known, the life she had built, and most of all, Lucas. How could she leave him? How could she walk away from the one person who made her feel like the world was full of endless possibilities? She ran to the park, her feet pounding against the pavement, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. She found Lucas under their oak tree, skipping stones into the pond as he often did. When he saw her, he immediately knew something was wrong. "Amelia," he said, concern etched across his face. "What is it?" She could barely get the words out. I have to go. We're moving. My uncle needs us, and my mom says we have no choice." Lucas's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, and finally to heartbreak. "When?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Next week," she said, her voice breaking. "Lucas, I don't want to go. I don't want to leave you." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Then don't," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can figure something out. You don't have to leave. We'll find a way." Tears streamed down Amelia's face. "I don't have a choice. My mom needs me. My family needs me." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if he could anchor her to this place, to him. "Then promise me," he whispered. "Promise me that no matter where you go, no matter how far apart we are, you'll never forget me. Promise me our souls will find their way back to each other." Amelia nodded against his chest, her tears soaking into his shirt. "I promise," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The days that followed were a blur of packing and goodbyes. Amelia avoided the oak tree, unable to face the memories it held. But on the night before she was to leave, she found herself drawn back to it. Lucas was waiting for her, holding something in his hand. "This is for you," he said, pressing a small pendant into her palm. It was a simple silver locket, engraved with their initials, "So you'll always have a piece of me with you." Amelia opened the locket, revealing a tiny photograph of the two of them, taken during one of their afternoons at the park. She felt the tears welling up again. "Lucas, I don't know how to say goodbye." "Then don't," he said, his voice firm, "because this isn't goodbye. It's just, see you later." The next morning, as Amelia's family drove away from the only home she had ever known, she clutched the locket tightly in her hand. She looked out the window, watching as the town faded into the distance. Her heart ached with a pain she didn't know was possible, but she held on to Lucas's words and the promise they had made. Lucas stood under the oak tree, watching the car disappear down the road. In his pocket, he carried the matching locket Amelia had given him. He pressed his hand against the tree, their initials carved into its bark, serving as a silent witness to their promise. Though the miles would separate them and time would test their bond, neither of them could shake the feeling that their story was far from over. The oak tree stood tall, a steadfast reminder that no matter the storms they faced, their souls would find their way back to each other. The years that followed were a blur of change, growth, and the kind of longing that neither time nor distance could completely erase. Amelia's new life across the ocean was a far cry from the quiet familiarity of her hometown. The bustling city she now called home was vibrant and full of opportunity, yet it often felt overwhelming and foreign. She devoted herself to her studies, her art providing a sanctuary amid the chaos of her new reality. But no matter how full her days became, there was an empty space in her heart that nothing could fill. She wore the silver locket Lucas had given her every day, its weight against her chest, a constant reminder of the promise they had made. Lucas, too, found his world irrevocably changed. The park and the oak tree remained, steadfast and unyielding, but they felt different without Amelia. He spent countless afternoons there, his thoughts consumed by memories of her laughter, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams. The locket she had given him never left his pocket, a tangible connection to the one person who had ever truly understood him. In her absence, Lucas threw himself into his writing. Words became his refuge, a way to process the emotions he couldn't share with anyone else. He poured his heart into stories of love and loss, of longing and resilience, drawing inspiration from the life he had imagined with Amelia. Over time, his talent gained recognition. His stories, though deeply personal, resonated with readers who saw their own experiences reflected in his words. By the time he published his first book, Lucas had become a name whispered with admiration in literary circles. For Amelia, life continued to present its own challenges. The sudden loss of her father had been a devastating blow, but the years that followed brought new heartbreak. Her marriage, though filled with hope in the beginning, ended in tragedy when her husband passed away in a car accident, leaving her to raise their young daughter Sarah alone. Amelia's grief was compounded when Sarah, now a grown woman, met her own untimely end in a similar accident, leaving behind a little girl, Lily. Amelia, now a widow and a grandmother, found herself in a role she had never anticipated, a caretaker and sole guardian to the bright, curious child who reminded her so much of her daughter. Through it all, Amelia clung to her art. Her sketches and paintings were her solace, her way of processing the pain and finding moments of beauty amidst the sorrow. She often painted the oak tree from memory, its strong branches and sturdy roots a symbol of the love and promises she had left behind. Lily, with her boundless energy and endless questions, became Amelia's greatest source of joy. The little girl's laughter filled their home, and her curiosity brought light to even the darkest days. Meanwhile, Lucas's success as an author continued to grow. His books, each more poignant than the last, captivated readers around the world. Yet for all his accomplishments, there was a loneliness that he couldn't shake. He attended literary events and spoke to packed audiences, but none of it filled the void left by Amelia. His heartache became the undercurrent of every story he wrote, his characters' struggles, mirroring his own. One day, while signing books at an event, he glanced at the inscription he had written, "To the one I lost, may we meet again." The words felt more like a prayer than a dedication. Fate, it seemed, had plans of its own. One crisp autumn morning, Amelia and Lily wandered into a quaint bookstore tucked away on a quiet street. Amelia had promised Lily a new book, a treat for doing so well in school. As they browsed the shelves, a familiar name caught Amelia's eye. She froze, her breath hitching as she reached for the book. There, on the cover, was Lucas's name. Her hands trembled as she turned it over, reading the summary on the back. The story felt achingly familiar, as if she were reading fragments of her own life. "Grandma?" Lily's voice broke through her reverie. "What's wrong?" Amelia managed a smile, though her heart was racing. "Nothing, sweetheart. I think I know the person who wrote this book." Lily's eyes widened. "You know a famous author? That's so cool." Amelia didn't respond. Her mind was already racing, piecing together the possibilities. Could it really be him? After all these years, could fate have brought her back to Lucas through the words he had written? That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Amelia sat in her quiet living room, the book clutched tightly in her hands. She read it in one sitting, tears streaming down her face as the story unfolded. It was their story, woven with the kind of detail only Lucas could have known. The locket, the oak tree, the promise, it was all there, etched into the pages as if he had been waiting for her to find it. As dawn broke, Amelia closed the book and held it to her chest. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. The world had changed, and they had changed with it. But perhaps their story wasn't over. Perhaps, just perhaps, the promise they had made so long ago still held the power to bring their souls back together. The air inside the small, independent bookstore carried the faint scent of aged paper and polished wood. Amelia had spent the past week thinking about Lucas's book, her thoughts consumed by the words he had so carefully woven together. There was no mistaking it. The story was theirs, every detail, a testament to a love neither time nor distance could erase. She had hesitated to act, uncertain if reaching out after all these years was the right thing to do. Yet, here she was, standing at the checkout counter with the same book in hand, her heart racing as she resolved to find him. The bookstore clerk, a kind older gentleman with round glasses, noticed the way Amelia clutched the book to her chest. "You're a fan of Lucas Grayson's work?" he asked with a knowing smile. "He's quite the storyteller." Amelia hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she said softly, "more than you can imagine." The simple clerk's smile widened. "Well, you're in luck. He's doing a book signing at the literary festival downtown this weekend. You should go meet him." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. Could it really be that simple? Was fate truly aligning to bring them together again? She thanked the clerk and left the store, clutching the book like a lifeline. Her resolve solidified with every step she took. She would go to the festival. She would see him again. The day of the festival arrived with a crisp autumn breeze that carried the scent of roasted chestnuts and freshly brewed coffee. The downtown square was alive with activity, stalls set up in neat rows, each one offering books, crafts, and artwork. Amelia navigated through the crowd, her nerves intensifying with every step that brought her closer to the tent where Lucas was scheduled to appear. She carried Lily by the hand, the little girl chattering excitedly about all the colorful booths they passed. When they reached the tent, Amelia's breath caught in her throat. There he was, seated behind a table, signing books for a line of eager readers. His hair was peppered with streaks of grey, and faint lines etched the corners of his eyes. But his smile was just as she remembered, warm and genuine. She felt a flood of emotions, relief, anticipation, and a pang of longing that had never quite left her. "Grandma, is that him?" Lily asked, tugging on Amelia's sleeve. Amelia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, sweetheart, that's him. That's—" As the line of readers dwindled, Amelia found herself hesitating. What would she say? What if he didn't remember her? Or worse, what if he had moved on completely? Lily, sensing her grandmother's hesitation, gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You can do it, Grandma. He'll be happy to see you." Summoning her courage, Amelia stepped forward. Lucas looked up as she approached, his pen pausing mid-signature. For a moment, his expression was one of polite curiosity, but as his eyes met hers, recognition dawned. His breath hitched, and he stood, his book forgotten on the table. "Amelia," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as she nodded. "It's me, Lucas." The world seemed to blur around them as they stared at each other, the years of separation melting away in an instant. Lucas stepped around the table, his movements hesitant, as if afraid she might vanish if he came too close. "I can't believe it," he murmured. "After all this time." Amelia's voice trembled. "I found your book," she said, holding it up. "I read it, and I knew it had to be you." Lucas's gaze softened, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I wrote it for you," he admitted. "I didn't know if you'd ever see it, but I had to try. You were always there, Amelia. In every word, in every story. I never stopped thinking about you." Before she could respond, Lily tugged on her hand, looking up at Lucas with wide, curious eyes. "Are you Grandma's friend?" she asked, innocently. Lucas smiled, crouching to her level. "I'd like to think so," he said warmly. "What's your name?" "Lily," she replied with a shy grin. "Well, Lily," Lucas said, glancing up at Amelia, "your grandma and I go way back." Amelia laughed softly, the sound breaking the tension that had gripped her. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had found each other again, against all odds. But as they stood there, surrounded by the bustling energy of the festival, Amelia knew that this was only the beginning. The years apart had left scars, and there were questions that needed answers. Yet, in that moment, under the golden light of the autumn sun, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a second chance. As the festival continued around them, Lucas reached for her hand. "There's so much I want to tell you," he said, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling within him. "But first, let's start with this. I've missed you more than words can say." Amelia squeezed his hand, her heart full of emotions she couldn't yet name. "And I've missed you, Lucas, more than you'll ever know." In that moment, surrounded by the hum of life and the whispers of destiny, two souls found their way back to each other, just as they had promised long ago. The afternoon breeze swept through the open-air cafe where Lucas and Amelia sat, the hum of city life creating a backdrop to the moment they had waited decades for. The festival had carried on around them, but they were no longer part of it. Now it was just the two of them, sitting across from each other, their hands wrapped around cups of coffee that had long since grown cold. Words felt insufficient for everything they wanted to say, but neither seemed eager to break the silence. The quiet held weight, but it was not uncomfortable. It was filled with 1,000 unspoken emotions and memories that lingered between them. Lucas was the first to speak, his voice soft but steady. "When I wrote that book, I didn't think I'd ever see you again. I told myself it was enough to immortalize what we had, even if it was just for me. But seeing you here now, Amelia, it feels like—" He paused, searching for the right words. "It feels like the universe hasn't given up on us." Amelia smiled faintly, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I've read it so many times now, Lucas. Every word felt like a piece of the life we might have had. It hurt to read, but it also reminded me of what we shared. And when I finished it, I knew I had to find you. I didn't know what would happen, but I couldn't let that be the end of our story." Lucas leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving hers. "So much has changed," he said quietly. "We've lived entire lives apart. There's so much I don't know about you anymore, and yet sitting here with you, it's like no time has passed at all." Amelia's expression softened. "It does feel that way, doesn't it? But the truth is, Lucas, time has passed. I'm not the same girl who used to sit under the oak tree with you. Life has, it's changed me in ways I never expected." Lucas nodded, his brow furrowing slightly. "Tell me," he said. "Whatever it is, I want to know. I want to understand the woman you've become." For the next hour, Amelia opened her heart. She spoke of her move to a foreign country, the struggles of adapting to a new life, and the heartbreak of losing her husband and daughter. She shared stories of Lily, her bright and curious granddaughter, who had become the center of her world. Her voice wavered at times, but she pushed through, determined to let Lucas see the life she had lived without him. When she finished, Lucas reached across the table, his hand resting gently over hers. "You've been through so much," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and yet you're still the strongest, most incredible person I've ever known." Amelia felt a lump rise in her throat. "What about you?" she asked. "What's your story, Lucas? I've read your words, but I want to hear it from you." Lucas hesitated for a moment before nodding. He spoke of his journey as a writer, the lonely nights spent crafting stories that often mirrored the life he wished he had. He talked about the people he had met, the fleeting relationships that never filled the void Amelia had left. "For a long time I told myself that work was enough," he admitted, "that if I could create something meaningful, it would make up for what I lost. But the truth is, nothing ever did. Nothing ever could." Amelia's heart ached as she listened. "Lucas," she said softly, "we can't change the past. But maybe we can write a new chapter, one where we don't have to wonder what if anymore." His eyes met hers, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. "Do you think it's possible?" he asked. "After everything?" Amelia smiled, a glimmer of the girl he had fallen in love with shining through. "I think the fact that we're here now, after all these years, says a lot about what's possible." Lucas took a deep breath, the weight of the past beginning to lift. "Then let's try," he said. "Let's see where this takes us." As they left the cafe, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the city, Lucas and Amelia walked side by side. For the first time in decades, they felt the stirrings of a love that had never truly left them. It wasn't the same as it had been under the oak tree all those years ago, but it was no less real. This was something new, something forged through the trials and triumphs of life, and as they ventured into the uncertain future, they both felt a quiet certainty. Their story was far from over. The weeks that followed their reunion were both exhilarating and deeply unsettling for Amelia and Lucas. Each meeting brought them closer, but the scars of the past lingered like shadows, threatening to cloud the bright moments they were beginning to create together. The unspoken weight of decades apart hung heavy between them, a reminder of the pain they had endured and the questions they had never dared to ask. One afternoon, as they strolled along the edge of a quiet lake, the tension finally surfaced. Lucas paused, his gaze fixed on the water. "Amelia, can I ask you something?" His voice was hesitant, almost cautious. She stopped walking and turned to him, her expression open but guarded. "Of course." "What is it?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. Why didn't you ever come back? After you left, I waited. I wrote letters, I called, but there was nothing. I never understood why you disappeared completely." Amelia's heart clenched at the pain in his voice. She had known this conversation was inevitable, but that didn't make it any easier. She looked away, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her coat. "Lucas, I wanted to. Believe me, I did. But things were so complicated. After my father died, my family fell apart. My mother was barely holding it together, and moving overseas was supposed to be a fresh start for us. But it wasn't. It was harder than I ever imagined." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "I tried to reach out. But my letters never got through. I don't know if they were lost or if someone kept them from you. And as time went on, I convinced myself that maybe you'd moved on, that it would be better for you if I let you go." Lucas's jaw tightened, his emotions warring between understanding and lingering hurt. "Better for me? Amelia, losing you was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I've spent years wondering what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. Hearing you say that you thought you were helping, it's hard to process. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. I'm so sorry, Lucas. I thought I was doing what was best, but looking back I realize how wrong I was. I should have fought harder. I should have trusted that you'd understand. Lucas exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders softening just a fraction. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle, but firm. And I should have fought harder too. I should have found a way to reach you no matter what. We both made mistakes, Amelia, but we're here now. Maybe that's what matters most. She nodded, a single tear escaping down her cheek. You're right. We can't change the past, but we can decide what we do with the time we have now. The conversation marked a turning point for them. With the truth finally out in the open, they began to address the wounds they had carried for so long. Each story shared, each memory revisited, brought them closer to understanding and forgiveness. They spent hours talking about their separate lives, the choices they had made, and the regrets they had carried. Slowly but surely, the walls they had built around their hearts began to crumble. One evening, Lucas invited Amelia and Lily to his home for dinner. It was a modest yet cozy house tucked away in a quiet neighborhood filled with books, photographs, and artifacts from his travels. As Lily explored the shelves, her curiosity bringing a spark of joy to the room, Lucas led Amelia to a small study at the back of the house. On the desk lay a manuscript, its pages neatly stacked and bound with a simple ribbon. Lucas picked it up and handed it to her, his expression both nervous and hopeful. This is my next book. It's not finished yet, but I want you to read it. It's about us, about what we lost, and what we found again. Amelia took the manuscript, her fingers brushing against his as she accepted it. Lucas, I don't know what to say. Say you'll read it, he said with a soft smile, and tell me what you think. Your opinion means more to me than anyone else's. She nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. I'll read it, I promise. As the evening came to a close, Amelia and Lily prepared to leave, but not before Lily gave Lucas a tight hug. Thank you for dinner, she said brightly. Can we come back soon? Lucas laughed, his gaze shifting to Amelia. You're welcome any time. Driving home that night, Amelia couldn't help but feel a sense of hope she hadn't known in years. The path to healing wasn't easy, but for the first time it felt possible. With Lucas by her side, she began to believe that they could face the past and build something beautiful from the fragments of what once was. The crisp morning air was filled with the sound of birdsong as Lucas led Amelia and Lily to a serene clearing at the edge of his property. The sprawling oak tree that stood in the center of the meadow commanded attention, its massive branches stretching wide as if embracing the heavens. Lucas had chosen this spot for a reason. It reminded him of the tree from their youth, where they had first made their promise to each other. I wanted to show you this, Lucas said softly, gesturing toward the tree. It's always been my sanctuary, a place where I come to think and find peace. And now I want it to be our place. Amelia approached the tree, her hand brushing against its rough bark as a wave of nostalgia washed over her. She could almost hear the echoes of their laughter from years ago, feel the innocence and hope they once shared. It's beautiful, she said, her voice tinged with emotion. It feels like home. Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, weathered box. He opened it to reveal a delicate gold locket shaped like a leaf, its surface engraved with intricate patterns. I had this made for you, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. It's a reminder of where we started and how far we've come, and a promise for everything still to come. Amelia's eyes filled with tears as she took the locket from his hands. Lucas, it's perfect. Thank you. He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. Amelia, I've spent so much of my life searching for meaning, for something to hold on to, and now I realize it was always you. You were the meaning, the anchor I needed. I don't want to waste another moment without you. Amelia nodded, her heart full. I feel the same. Being here with you, it feels like we've been given a second chance. And I don't want to let it slip away. Lucas smiled, a mix of relief and joy lighting up his face. Then let's make a new promise. Right here, right now. They stood together beneath the oak tree, hands intertwined, and renewed the vow they had made so many years ago to always find their way back to each other, no matter what life threw their way. It was a simple promise, but one that carried the weight of everything they had endured and everything they still hoped to build. Lily, watching from a distance, ran toward them with a beaming smile. "What are you two doing?" she asked, her curiosity infectious. Amelia laughed, pulling Lily into a hug. "We're making a promise," she said, "a promise to always stick together." Lucas knelt down to Lily's level, holding out his hand. "What do you say, Lily? Should we make it a family promise?" Lily's face lit up as she eagerly placed her hand over theirs. Yes, a family promise. As the three of them stood beneath the oak tree, hands joined and hearts full, the world felt right. It wasn't about erasing the past or forgetting the pain. It was about embracing the present and building a future together. And in that moment, Lucas and Amelia knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. The morning after their heartfelt promise beneath the oak tree, Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. Lucas had invited her and Lily to stay for a few more days at his countryside home, and she gladly accepted. The atmosphere in the house was warm and inviting, filled with the quiet hum of possibility. For the first time in years, Amelia felt as though her heart was beginning to heal. Lucas, true to his word, was determined to make every moment count. He spent the morning preparing breakfast with Lily, who had quickly grown attached to him. The sound of their laughter echoed through the kitchen as Lucas attempted to flip pancakes, only to have one land on the floor. Lily giggled uncontrollably, and even Amelia, standing at the doorway, couldn't suppress her laughter. "Well, that one's for the birds," Lucas said with a grin, picking up the pancake and tossing it into the compost. "A bin." He turned to Amelia, his eyes sparkling. "I'll have to redeem myself with the next one." "I think you're doing just fine," Amelia replied, her voice soft but sincere. She stepped into the kitchen, her presence adding to the warmth of the moment. After breakfast, Lucas suggested they take a walk. Through the nearby village, the cobblestone streets and quaint shops provided a charming backdrop for their day. Lucas held Lily's hand as they wandered through a small marketplace, stopping occasionally to admire handmade trinkets and fresh produce. Amelia couldn't help but notice how natural Lucas seemed with Lily, as though he had been a part of their lives all along. At one stall, a vendor selling delicate flower crowns caught Lily's attention. Lucas knelt beside her, helping her choose a crown adorned with tiny white daisies. He placed it gently on her head, stepping back to admire his handiwork. "What do you think, Amelia?" he asked, turning to her with a playful smile. "Doesn't she look like a little princess?" Amelia's heart swelled at the sight. "She looks perfect," she said, her voice filled with emotion. She reached out to adjust the crown slightly, her fingers brushing against Lucas's hand. The brief contact sent a wave of warmth through her, and she found herself looking into his eyes longer than she intended. The rest of the day was spent exploring the village and sharing stories from their past. Lucas recounted humorous anecdotes from his travels as a writer, while Amelia shared tales of her adventures raising Lily. Each story brought them closer, weaving a tapestry of connection that felt both new and familiar. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lucas led them to a small hill overlooking the countryside. They sat together on a blanket, the cool evening breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers. Lily lay sprawled beside them, her flower crown slightly askew as she gazed up at the sky. "This feels like a dream," Amelia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never imagined I could feel this whole again." Lucas turned to her, his expression earnest. "You deserve this, Amelia. You deserve happiness and so much more. I'm just grateful to be a part of it." She looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Lucas, I'm scared that this will all slip away, that life will find a way to take it from us." He reached for her hand, his grip firm yet gentle. Life has taken enough from us already, but this is ours to hold on to, and I promise I'll do everything in my power to keep it. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as she nodded, unable to find the words to express the depth of her feelings. In that moment, she realized that Lucas wasn't just offering her a chance at love. He was offering her a chance at healing, at building a future where they could both find peace. The evening ended with laughter and quiet conversation, the kind that only happens when two people truly understand each other. As they made their way back to the house, Lucas carried a sleeping Lily in his arms, her flower crown now slipping to one side. Amelia walked beside him, her heart full of hope. Later that night, as Amelia lay in bed, she couldn't help but reflect on the day. Lucas's words echoed in her mind, a soothing balm to the fears she had carried for so long. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that happiness was possible, not just for her, but for Lily as well. And as she drifted off to sleep, a quiet resolve settled within her. She would embrace this new chance with Lucas, no matter the risks, because some opportunities were too precious to let slip away. The days that followed were a whirlwind of planning and anticipation. Lucas had asked Amelia to marry him during a quiet evening on the porch, under a canopy of stars. His words had been simple, yet profound. "I've spent my life searching for meaning, Amelia, but the truth is, you've always been my meaning. Will you let me spend the rest of my days proving it to you?" Amelia's tears had been her answer, and the embrace they shared felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Their wedding was planned to be a modest but heartfelt celebration, held beneath the same oak tree, where they had renewed their promise to each other. As the day of the ceremony arrived, the atmosphere buzzed with a mixture of excitement and nostalgia. Friends and family from both their lives gathered, filling the clearing with warmth and laughter. Lily, ever the spirited flower girl, flitted between guests, her flower crown a little lopsided as she distributed petals with uncontainable joy. Lucas stood at the base of the oak tree, dressed in a simple but elegant suit. His hands were clasped nervously in front of him as he watched the guests settle into their seats. Despite his composed exterior, his heart raced with anticipation. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on him. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a celebration of love that had endured decades, hardships, and countless twists of fate. When Amelia appeared at the edge of the clearing, Lucas's breath caught. She was radiant, her dress flowing like a whisper of silk against the soft breeze. Her hair was adorned with delicate wildflowers, a nod to the simplicity and beauty of the life they were building together. She walked arm in arm with her brother, who had flown in to be by her side on this special day. As Amelia reached the oak tree, their eyes locked, and the world seemed to fade away. Lucas stepped forward to meet her, his hand trembling slightly as he took hers. The officiant, a close friend of Lucas's from his literary circles, began the ceremony with a heartfelt speech about love, resilience, and the power of destiny. Today, we celebrate not just the union of two souls, but the journey that brought them here, he said, his voice steady and warm. Amelia and Lucas remind us that love, no matter how delayed or challenged, is always worth fighting for. When it came time for their vows, Lucas's voice was filled with emotion. "Amelia, you are my past, my present, and my future. You've taught me that love is not just a feeling, but a choice, one we make every single day. I promise to choose you, always." Amelia's vows were equally heartfelt, her voice steady despite the tears brimming. In her eyes, "Lucas, you have been my guiding star, even when the night seemed darkest. You've shown me that love is not bound by time or circumstance, and for that I am eternally grateful. I promise to stand by you through every joy and every challenge, for as long as we both shall live." As they exchanged rings, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree, as if nature itself was blessing their union. The moment they were pronounced husband and wife, the clearing erupted in applause and cheers. Lucas pulled Amelia into a kiss that spoke of promises kept and futures embraced. The reception was held in the same clearing, with tables draped in white linens and adorned with wildflowers. Guests dined on hearty homemade dishes, and the air was filled with music and laughter. Lily took to the dance floor with boundless energy, pulling Lucas and Amelia into her joyful orbit. Later, in the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lucas stood to make a toast. He raised his glass, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "To Amelia," he began, his eyes locking onto hers. "You've given me more than I ever deserved. You've taught me that it's never too late to find happiness, and that love, real love, is worth every risk. Here's to a lifetime of laughter, of hope, and of never letting go." The guests raised their glasses in unison, their cheers ringing out into the night. Amelia, her heart full, leaned over to whisper in Lucas's ear, "I'm the one who's lucky. You've given me back my faith in love." As the evening drew to a close, the guests began to depart, leaving Lucas, Amelia, and Lily alone beneath the oak tree. The three of them sat together, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the stars twinkle above. Lily broke the comfortable silence, her voice filled with curiosity. "Do you think the stars are happy for us?" Lucas smiled, pulling her close. "I think they're celebrating right along with us." Amelia rested her head on Lucas's shoulder, her hand finding his. "This feels like a dream," she murmured. "But it's real. It's finally real." Lucas kissed the top of her head, his heart swelling with gratitude. "It's real because we made it real, together." And as the stars continued to shine, they sat in peaceful contentment, knowing that their journey had led them exactly where they were meant to be. Years passed, and the love between Lucas and Amelia only deepened. Their life together became a testament to the power of second chances and the enduring strength of true love. Together, they created a life full of meaning and purpose, one that touched not only their own hearts but also the lives of those around them. Lucas's career as a writer flourished in ways he never anticipated. Inspired by their incredible journey, he and Amelia co-authored a book titled The Stars That Led Us Home. The memoir chronicled their love story, its beginnings, its heartaches, and its miraculous renewal. The book became an instant bestseller, resonating with readers across generations and cultures. It wasn't just a story of love, it was a story of resilience, hope, and the belief that destiny always finds a way. Amelia, too, found her own way of giving back. She started a foundation dedicated to supporting widows and single mothers, drawing from her own experiences of loss and perseverance. The foundation, aptly named Lily's Light, in honor of her granddaughter, provided resources, emotional support, and educational opportunities to women striving to rebuild their lives. Lily herself became the face of the foundation, her bright spirit inspiring everyone she met. The small countryside home they shared became a hub of warmth and creativity. Friends, family, and even strangers drawn by their story often visited, seeking advice, comfort, or simply the chance to be near the couple, who had turned heartbreak into hope. The oak tree, under which they had renewed their promise, stood as a silent witness to their journey, its branches now adorned with ribbons and messages left by visitors who had been touched by their story. One summer evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, the family gathered under the oak tree for a special celebration. It was Lucas and Amelia's 10th wedding anniversary, and their loved ones had come together to honor the life they had built. Lily, now a vibrant young woman with her own dreams of making a difference, stood to give a toast. "To my grandparents," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've shown me what love truly means. It's not just about the good times, but about weathering the storms together. It's about choosing each other every single day. Your story is proof that love can heal, inspire, and transform. Thank you for being my guiding stars." Her words brought tears to everyone's eyes, including Lucas and Amelia. As the crowd raised their glasses, Lucas leaned over to whisper in Amelia's ear, "She's got your grace and my stubbornness. A perfect combination." Amelia laughed softly, her hand finding his. "She's a reflection of everything we've been through, and she's our greatest legacy." As the evening continued, laughter and music filled the air. Guests shared stories, danced under the stars, and marveled at the depth of love that had brought everyone together. Lucas, ever the observer, took a moment to step back and soak it all in. He looked at Amelia, surrounded by their family and friends, her face glowing with happiness, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Later that night, as they sat together on the porch, Lucas pulled Amelia close. The sky was clear, the stars twinkling, stars brightly above them. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" he asked, his voice tinged with wonder. Amelia nodded, her head resting on his shoulder. "All the time. It's incredible to think how far we've come, and yet it feels like we've just begun." He smiled, his fingers lacing with hers. "If I've learned anything, it's that love isn't just a feeling, it's a journey, and I'm grateful every day that I get to walk it with you." Amelia tilted her head to look at him, her eyes shining with affection. "I feel the same way, and I know that no matter what the future holds, as long as we have each other, we'll be okay." Their conversation drifted into comfortable silence, the kind that only comes with deep understanding and connection. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging the love story that had unfolded beneath them. The next morning, Lucas and Amelia found a letter tucked into the branches of the oak tree. It was from a young couple who had visited the tree after reading their book. The letter spoke of struggles, of hope, and of how Lucas and Amelia's story had inspired them to fight for their own love. "Do you see this?" Amelia said, holding up the letter. "This is what it's all about, not just our journey, but how it can help others on theirs." Lucas nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "It's incredible, isn't it? How one story can ripple out and touch so many lives." Amelia folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box where they kept similar mementos. "It's more than incredible, it's a gift." As the years went on, Lucas and Amelia continued to write, to love, and to inspire. Their story became a beacon of hope for those who doubted the power of destiny, a reminder that true love is never lost. It's simply waiting to be found. And as they sat together under the oak tree, their hands entwined and their hearts full, they knew one thing with absolute certainty. The stars had led them home, and their love was their greatest legacy. What lesson did this heartfelt story bring to you? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. We love hearing how these narratives inspire and touch your heart. Here at Living Narratives, every video is created with dedication, care, and the hope of connecting our stories to yours. If this video moved you, don't forget to like it, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell. Your support not only motivates us, but also helps us continue bringing incredible stories that celebrate life, love, and resilience. And remember, the journey doesn't stop here. Explore more videos on Living Narratives and discover stories that illuminate, inspire, and transform. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family. We can't wait to see you in the next chapter of this amazing journey.